Tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the 22nd, the Legislative Black Caucus will rededicate our monument to those who were expelled during Reconstruction. And we're going to talk about those who were expelled during Reconstruction, and we're also going to talk about those who are being expelled today during the second Reconstruction.
They're similar, are they not?
Very similar. Very similar. Very similar, Maynard.
What time tomorrow?
3 o'clock in the rotunda of the Capitol. We're going to rededicate the monument that was erected in 1978, 2 years before I arrived in the legislature. We have revamped it, and it's more inclusive now, and that's at 3. The Quitman 10 will be here tomorrow. 3 of them will be here tomorrow. The 3 school board members who were suspended will be at the Capitol tomorrow. And
do you see this era akin to what happened during Reconstruction?
Yes.
You're saying this is popping up all over the country.
Yes.
Is this by design, you think?
Yes.
And does it have the same repercussions as Reconstruction did?
Yes, it does. And most people who don't know their history can't relate to it, Maynard, but let me tell you something. If we lose the Voting Rights Act, and you got to understand now, Georgia, Alabama, and other states are working in this coalition to repeal Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. The governor of Georgia, the attorney general of Georgia, is working with other attorney generals across the South, and they have devised a strategy to get one of these cases to the Supreme Court on Section 5, the pre-clearance section. The Shelby County, Alabama case is the one they want. Shelby County, Alabama case. And if the U.S. Supreme Court says we're going to strike down Section 5, that's really the end of the Voting Rights Act as we know it. Because if you don't have a pre-clearance section in the Act, then we'll revert back to all kinds of impediments. There will be no pre-clearance. So states can just do what they want to do. And so we see this as an erosion of the Voting Rights Act. This is turning the clock back on our constitutional rights. And I see it as a real threat. I think the lawyers who work with us every day and who are progressive in terms of our politics have worried about one of these cases reaching the current court. The makeup of the court today is not friendly to saving the Voting Rights Act. This is a dangerous court, and there's a possibility we could see a ruling saying that Section 5 is no longer relevant. And then they'll attack Section 2.
So you're suggesting the Quitman 10 plus 2 resonates all across this country?
All across the country.
It's not just a small town.
No. We have other cases in Georgia. We've gotten citizens from Washington, Georgia, from Millersville, Georgia, from Forsyth, Georgia, from Terrell County, Georgia, from Albany. So they've just been coming and they're saying, look, every time we go out and conduct a voter registration drive, or an African American runs against a good old boy white Republican, here comes the state election board wanting to investigate us. And that usually leads to a recommendation to the local DA that the GBI should be brought in and they should go out and intimidate folks and threaten folks and try to build these cases.
Bloody Sundays on March 9th, as you well know, having been a field general in SCLC.
Yeah.
And part of the issues going to be talked about is voter suppression.
Right.
Is that time come now? Are we at that point in terms of a national issue?
Yes. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder was in Columbia, South Carolina a month ago talking about the same issue. I wish he'd come to Georgia because we have more serious cases in Georgia than South Carolina. We're the largest state. The population of African Americans in this state is double the size of African Americans in South Carolina. South Carolina is important. But they went to South Carolina to talk about the voter ID. Georgia passed a voter ID law in 2006. Right. And we've been begging the Department of Justice to come and sue Georgia over that voter ID. Now, the voter ID that passed here was under the Bush administration. And so they passed it, pre-cleared it. We're saying it's not too late to challenge Georgia's voter ID.
So there are any number of things going on.
The voter ID laws, the voter suppression, voter verification laws, cutting early voting days across the states where you have early voting. We fought a long time ago. Cut early voting in Georgia 45-21 last session. In Florida, they are trying to dismantle early voting altogether. They've already passed a statute to cut the days, but they want to just eliminate early voting in Florida altogether. So all across this country, we see an attack on our voting rights. And we say that thank God Dr. Lowry is still living at the age of 90 who can relate to this. We say that there is no more important time to stand up and defend the Voting Rights Act than now. Than now, right now. There are some people who have the thought, and I agree with them, that the Voting Rights Act probably will not be extended in 20 years. In 20 years from now, depending on the makeup of Congress and who's in the White House, there's a very likelihood that the Voting Rights Act will not be extended again, period. But at the same time, there is an attack going through the litigation phase where they're trying to get one of these cases to the Supreme Court, particularly before President Obama has a chance to appoint anybody else.
Representative Brooks, if I may build on that question Mr. Eaton asked you, you know, it's very clear in your mind and by his questioning that this is by design, and
yes.
If so, if you would feel secure enough to answer this question, do you feel, we know the influence of corporations, lobbyists, and special interest groups in the country, but do you think that the design is by such organizations as the Ku Klux Klan?
I think the Koch brothers who are multi-billionaires, who are financing several of the initiatives, groups like the Southeastern Legal Foundation and other conservative right-wing think tanks, they were promoting the idea that the Voting Rights Act had outlived its usefulness several years ago. And the big money folks behind these attacks are coming from people like the Koch brothers, who are heavily Republican. They own many corporations globally. So they got the money to fight us. And I think that the Ku Klux Klan mentality, that mentality plays in the whole equation of a strategy to dismantle our voting rights. And if we lose the Voting Rights Act, you won't see people like me serving in general assemblies across the South. You won't see mayors. You won't see school board members, council members. Basically the elected officials that we have across the Deep South, where most of us are, probably will be cut in half or reduced down to a fourth. I'm serious about that, because what you'll have is you'll have at-large voting again. You could go back to literate tests. you could have all kind of schemes that will be designed to create impediments so that we can't win. At-large voting.
I don't think it's by accident.
At-large voting.
That the
no district voting anymore.
The people who got in trouble, so to speak, right away were the school board. They got their school board appointees. How do you think that this situation is going to impact specifically education in Georgia as a whole, but then collectively across the Southeast? When
you look at school boards in many small communities, the school board budget supersede the city council's budget or the county commission budget or the sheriff budget or the district attorney's budget or the judicial branch of government budget. Just look at the number, just look at the money that school boards control. And that's why there's such a big fight over who's going to be on school boards. If you look at what happened in Clayton County 4 years ago, with the state of Georgia passed a new law to give Sonny Perdue the right to remove school board members in Clayton County because it was a majority black board. They wanted to fire a white male superintendent. That started all kinds of stuff. And we saw those black women removed. We saw the governor appoint them. In my county where I was raised, Warren County, same battle. 3 black women decided to fire a white female school board superintendent. And the Chamber of Commerce came to Governor Perdue and said, these folks are just causing all kind of problems. We think Sachs is going to come in and snatch our accreditation. So Sonny Perdue removed them. He removed them, Sonny Perdue. Then under Nathan Deal a year ago, he was given more power to remove school board members. It was designed to go after Atlanta, but really it affects school boards across the state. So you have governors now with all kinds of unlimited power to just remove people before they've been charged with anything, before they've been convicted of any crime. Just remove them because somebody says, well, we think these people might be a problem.
Finally, is this just a Southern thing? For example, does Reverend E.T. Chauvinist in Cleveland care about this?
Oh, yeah. It's I think it's a Southern strategy, but it impacts the nation. Because you see, the Voting Rights Act covers more than just the Deep South. When you look at the Voting Rights Act, really it's a national act in many ways, because in certain states, depending upon the minority population, Section 5 or Section 2 would kick in. And it varies when you get out of the Deep South. But the Voting Rights Act is our saving grace for the deep southern states, for sure. And if you remove it, there's no doubt in my mind, we will see statutes enacted going back to at-large voting, literacy tests, all kinds of things. Like my grandmama told me when I was a little boy growing up in Warren County, she said, they would ask us to count the bubbles in a bar of soap. It's real stuff. You walk in to vote, oh, well, how many bubbles in that bar of soap, Ada? My grandmama told me to go to hell. She was going to register to vote, come hell or high water. And they had to let her register. My daddy in Hancock County told me the story where he went over to register at one side of the courthouse, and they told him that niggers couldn't register over here. You had to go to the other side. So he went to the other side, and it was all Republican. The Republicans would allow you to come in and register, but Democrats wouldn't, because the Democratic Party was segregated. It was lily white, and it was an all-white primary system until 1948. Thank God for Mr. Primus King out of Columbus, who sued the party, broke that down. All I'm trying to give you is the history of where we were and where we could return if we lose the Voting Rights Act. So if you take us out of the political equation, you really take us out of any kind of influential positions to impact our budget, to impact resources coming to our communities. It starts with those who sit at the table to divide up budgets, to pass appropriation acts. And so if you remove us from the table, we can't bring resources to Auburn Avenue. We can't take resources to Quitman or Warrenton or Madison. You know, we can't do it. We're not there anymore. So this is real stuff to me, and I really think it's more serious than most people realize. Some people say, well, this is 2012. We got a black man in the White House. That can't happen. It will happen. If you let the Supreme...
Are we too afraid of some conspiracy? I mean, there are those who want to say that.
I listened to the speech. I read the speech of Eric Holder. I heard him on CNN when he spoke in South Carolina. Then I went and got his full text. The words that he was using in South Carolina resonated across the whole nation. Basically, he was saying, wherever impediments should surface, we would challenge them. We will go after them. And this is a serious impediment in Georgia, where the governor of the state has removed people without a conviction, without an arraignment, and he's basically saying, you can't serve until I decide that it's proper for me to put you back in office. But it's designed to send a chilling effect. It's designed to kind of put fear in the hearts of our people who would dare to conduct voter registration, who would dare to put their names on the ballot and run.
And they've been using these tactics forever.
Amen.
And the absentee ballot process, where Sonny Perdue actually sent out with his literature to voters a absentee ballot application.
That's
so,
right.
so you know, it's just when certain people avail themselves of that same process, you want to make sure that they don't. That's just like they instituted poll taxes again, because now you have to prove your citizenship to vote, and to prove your citizenship, you got to have a birth certificate, and if you don't have it, you got to buy it. That's right. So all of these policies are just putting those old barriers with a new twist and a new name to them.
Well, let me ask this question. Then you have that House bill, and I'm trying to look at it as a bigger picture. Look at the House bill, 1162.
House Resolution 1162. It's on the House calendar for debate tomorrow. It's on the calendar.
It's back again.
Which tells me that Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones has the votes to move it. It's on the calendar. We got the calendar for tomorrow today. It's on the calendar. So there's going to debate on the floor of the House tomorrow on House Resolution 1162 that will destroy our public school systems as we know it. Because this will allow the creation of charter schools by the state of Georgia and force your local school districts to pay for them. Whether your local school want them or not, if they pass this, the state of Georgia can say, well, we're going to create a charter. You got to pay for it. Atlanta, Madison, Warrenton, wherever. And so this is dangerous because they've already cut $5 billion out of public education over the last 10 years. Since Roy Barnes left as governor, we've seen less and less and less money for public education. That's why class sizes have increased. That's why we lost teachers and counselors. That's why we've lost nurses in schools across the state. I'm talking Georgia. I'm not just talking Atlanta now. You got to thank Georgia for this. Local school districts across the state have cut their attendance days from 180, which was mandated by state law, to 175, 170. Some want to go to 160. And it's been in our code for years. You got to educate your children for 180 days. And this is going to impact the kind of federal money that we have been getting, equalization grants and all of. So I'm telling you all that the atmosphere that we're living in, the people who control our government today are very dangerous. And they're trying to turn the clock back in so many ways. Education, voting rights.
We got some black people supporting.
We got a few misguided people of color who simply don't understand the ramifications of giving these people, Maynard, the opportunity to reshape our government in a very, very drastic way. If they win on the charter school amendment, the next one will be Milton County. Milton County is a constitutional amendment. The only reason the Speaker Pro Tem hadn't moved on that one, she brought it last year, is because she doesn't have the votes yet. But if they win on the charter school, that's going to embolden them to come back, next year maybe, with Milton County. If you cut Milton County would be just north of what we call Buckhead in the inner city. You cut off the richest part of Fulton and give it to another county. That leaves us in the city of Atlanta going south dirt poor. When Sandy Springs was created, Maynard, they lost $82 million in Fulton County's budget. $82 million when Sandy Springs was created. So now you got Johns Creek, you got Milton as a city. They want another county again up there on the north. And it would just devastate Fulton County. I don't know what our Board of Commissioners would do. We won't have the money to run a county in the inner city. You just basically have your judicial system, you might have the sheriff, and just about everything else in Fulton County will be gone.
Be gutted. Do you have some sense from having listened to U.S. Attorney General Holder on CNN and any other private conversations, whatever, that's been going forward, how he's going to respond to this communication?
It's going to be interesting. Dr. Lowry suggests that we write him. We wrote him. We sent a copy to Dr. Lowry. Dr. Lowry said he would call him. I wish Doc was sitting here today because he has had conversations with the Attorney General and people in the Obama administration. I can't speak for him, but I would hope and pray that the Attorney General and the President and the entire Department of Justice will take a hard look at what's happening in Georgia, as they're doing in South Carolina, Arizona, Texas, even Alabama. So I can't promise anything. I don't know what will happen. All I can say is those of us who were raised in the movement and still connected to it have a responsibility to raise these issues and demand some action from the Department of Justice. Just as we did under Bush, just as we did under Reagan, we have to be consistent. We can't back up and not have that energy and vigor simply because we have an African American in the White House or an African American Attorney General. It is our responsibility to be consistent and bring these issues to the attention of the federal government and say we need help. We're not going to get relief from the state.
You have some kind of idea, Representative Brooks, what might be the first move, if it's a positive one, what might be the first move the U.S. Attorney General would make? I
would pray and hope that the U.S. Attorney General would say our Department of Justice is going to intervene in the Quitman case. This is a gross violation of federal voting rights protections. The citizens of that community are grossly impacted, and this sets a bad precedent. It sets a bad precedent because these are phony charges. The reason I say they're phony is because they won't bring them before the court for an arraignment.
Right.
They might get dismissed. But at the same time, the governor has done what we think really requires precurrence because it's a voting change. It's a voting change. For him to remove 3 black people, you flip the school board back to majority white, first of all. And we view this as a voting change. It deserves precurrence. So the Attorney General should intervene and say, you can't do that until you make a submission to the Department of Justice for us to review. Let these people go back in office. Let them serve. And let the charges that have been brought by the special prosecutor wind their way through the court system. Let's see what the courts will do with that. If they're convicted, I could see them being removed. But they have not even been arraigned. There haven't been a trial. There's no conviction. So, other day someone asked me, how do you feel about the governor suspending them? I said, it's wrong. The governor has been accused of a lot. He has not been suspended. He's running the state of Georgia. He's under federal investigation, which started during his campaign of 2010. He's still under federal investigation. I don't know if he's guilty or not. I'm not going to make any accusations. But he deserved the benefit of the doubt In America, under our Constitution, you are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, that's the way I read it.
You've been doing this for a while. As a civil rights warrior, now in the state legislature. What do you make of it? I mean, you've been doing this. Have things changed at all? I mean, are you back where you started?
Everything has changed, but nothing has changed. I started at SCLC as a teenager. I've grown up in this. It's been my life. Being in the House is just an accident. But being a civil rights worker is a lifetime assignment for me. And I have to do it. I can't do otherwise, you know. And so being in the legislature gives you a chance to look at it from the inside, to be a part of the lawmaking process, and you learn every day something new. You watch legislation, resolutions moving. So mainly you have a chance to see it from the other side. But then on the outside is where reality sets in. Because when laws are made, when resolutions are passed, those are pieces of paper that are signed into law. But on the outside is where the implementation happens. This is where the reality sets in out here. And so many people don't understand that. They get caught up in the hype. It's like, well, we passing this and passing that. Well, you better understand what you're doing. Because what you're doing is going to impact citizens and unborn generations for life. And
that
be very
careful.
That piece of paper, that little piece of paper, that little bitty piece of paper that somebody signs, it might be a line in the budget. But that line in the budget might eliminate the Mohawk School of Medicine funding, which has been in the budget since 1978. Joe Frank Harris, when he was chairman of appropriations, put it in. That one little line, if you take that line out, Mohawk School of Medicine could go down to 2. So you have to be very careful how you make law.
Is there such a thing, Representative Brooks, of any light of hope on the horizon in any pocket on the globe?
Yeah, there's many lights of hope. There are lights of hope when I come to the Coalition for the People's Agenda, and that's why I leave the Capitol and come here. There are lights of hope when I go to Concerned Black Clergy. There are lights of hope when I go to NAACP, where I was last Saturday, the Atlanta branch. There are lights of hope when I travel around the country and I see people of color struggling, working together, saying we are not going to just sit down and take this anymore. There are young people, students, high school, college level, middle school students who are saying, I want to be a part of this movement. I want to be a part of Dr. King's work. Yes, I see a lot of positive lights of hope. What I think we have to do, those of us who have the experience of coming through the movement, we have to do a better job of getting back to the trenches, like a Hosea Williams taught us, like a Jane Bevel, like a Dorothy Cotton taught us as students. You have to go out there where the people are. Dr. Lowry says it all the time. If there are 800,000, 600,000, 500,000 unregistered black folks in the state, we got to go to them. They're not coming to us. And so it takes resources. There's no difference.
What time will that be tomorrow?
3 o'clock in the rotunda.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Leroy Johnson is going to be saluted.
Oh, good.
Senator Johnson was the first one elected since Reconstruction, 1962. And the chairman of the caucus, Emmanuel Jones, says we're going to highlight his service because when he came in 2 years before the Civil Rights Act and 3 years before the Voting Rights Act. But you can imagine what he went through as the first black up there since Reconstruction. So we're gonna salute him, and we're gonna talk about Quitman, because Friday when the session ends, many of us will hit the road to Quitman Friday, and we hope to have a great showing. We hope to have a great march on Saturday, and we hope to send a message to the governor and the district attorney that we are not going to tolerate these suspensions remaining in effect. We want the suspensions lifted so they can go back in office. Somebody said the other day, well, the governor, he said word through Emmanuel Jones. Emmanuel Jones met with the governor with some of my colleagues, and he called me up. He had all of them on the speakerphone. He said, well, we went to meet with the governor, and the governor said to ask you if you would agree that we could submit names for him to fill those seats. I said, no, we can't do that. If we do that, we are participating in denying the citizens the right to choose candidates of choice. We are weakening their case when they stand before the bar of justice. We are buying into this idea that they may have committed something wrong.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I can't do that. So they said, okay, we'll just tell them to just put them back in office then. I said, yeah, that's what we'll do. We're not gonna recommend the appointment of anyone, because these folks have been elected by the citizens. You know,
Clearly.
And I said, tell the governor that he's been accused of a whole lot of stuff, but he's still serving.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not accusing him of anything. All I'm saying is what I read. This governor's on a federal investigation by the House Ethics Committee and the FBI for his business practices while a candidate for governor. Now, those investigations are still going on. I don't know if the man is innocent or guilty.
But he's serving.
But he's serving, and he deserves the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to say he's
And on
guilty.
that note, I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you, Clyde.